The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. The title of this talk is Avalokitesvara, She Who Hears the Cries of the World. Reverend Master Jisho offered a retreat a number of years ago on the Shurangama Sutra. In one of his talks, he mentioned that the Buddha asked the assembled sages to speak about how they broke through to enlightenment. The Buddha was trying to find out what method would work best for Ananda. 25 Bodhisattvas and Arahants spoke. The last to speak was Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. She based her practice on the enlightened nature of hearing. She listened within herself as we do in meditation. After she had spoken, the Buddha asked Manjusri which of these methods would be best for Ananda and other beings like us in the future. Manjusri said that Avalokitesvara's method would be the best. By listening and letting go of everything, she was able to hear the voice of the unborn. And this is what she says. Then the Bodhisattva, who hears the cries of the world, stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "World-honored one, I can recall the time when a Buddha named He Who Hears the Cries of the World was in this world as many eons ago as there are sands in the river Ganges. Before this Buddha, I made the resolution to become fully awakened, and he instructed me to enter samadhi through a practice of hearing and contemplating. I began with a practice based on the enlightened nature of hearing. First, I redirected my hearing inward in order to enter the current of the sages. Then external sounds disappeared. With the direction of my hearing reversed and with sound stilled, both sounds and silence ceased to arise. So it was that, as I gradually progressed, what I heard and my awareness of what I heard came to an end. Even when that state of mind in which everything had come to an end disappeared, I did not rest. My awareness and the objects of my awareness were emptied, and when that process of emptying my awareness was wholly complete, then even that emptying and what had been emptied vanished. Coming into being and ceasing to be themselves ceased to be. Then the ultimate stillness was revealed. And here's the commentary on that. To listen wisely is to listen inside, not outside. You do not allow your mind to chase after sounds. Earlier in the sutra, the Buddha spoke of not following the 6 faculties and not being influenced by them. You reverse your hearing to listen to your own true nature. Instead of listening to external sounds, you focus inwardly on your body and mind. You cease to seek outside yourselves, and you turn around the light of your attention so that it will shine within yourself. Back to Avalokitesvara. All of a sudden, I transcended the worlds of ordinary beings, and I also transcended the worlds of beings who have transcended the ordinary world. Everything in the 10 directions was fully illuminated, and I gained 2 remarkable powers. First, my mind ascended to unite with the fundamental, wondrous, enlightened mind of all Buddhas in all 10 directions, and my power of compassion became the same as theirs. Second, my mind descended to unite with all beings of the 6 destinies in all 10 directions, such that I felt their sorrows and their prayerful yearnings as my own. World-honored one, because I had made offerings to the thus come one who hears the cries of the world, I received from that thus come one a hidden transmission of a Vajra-like samadhi, such that my power of compassion became the same as the Buddha's. I was then able to go to all lands and appear in 32 forms that respond to what beings require. Avalokitesvara then talks about the way that she would help beings depending on what was being wanted and that they would be able to handle. She mentions 32 ways she would help beings. The first way, this is what she says: World-honored one, suppose there are bodhisattvas who have entered samadhi and have advanced in their practice such that they are free from outflows. I think that's like searching outside of ourselves. If these bodhisattvas wish to reach a more sublime understanding, I will appear to them as a Buddha, and I will instruct them in the Dharma that will lead them to liberation. So then she goes through 30 more, going down gradually from this highest form, which is to seek complete liberation, to number 32, which says, to non-human beings who wish to be free of being non-human, whether they have bodies or are bodiless, whether they are capable of cognition or are not capable of cognition, I will appear to them as they are and will instruct them in the Dharma that will lead them to fulfillment of their wish. So Avalokitesvara will help beings in whatever way is best for them. In the end, the purpose of great compassion is to lead us to enlightenment. This is a very important point. Great compassion's help is not necessarily a warm, fuzzy feeling, although that is definitely nice to experience. It is what will help us to let go of the self. And this makes me think of Reverend Master Jiyu. She was trying to help us all find what she had found. She had a great compassionate heart and responded intuitively to the needs of beings. She was helping us to let go of the self, of selfishness, and this could be very difficult. One time when I had made a big mistake in my training, she came down really hard on me. It was devastating, and yet I still couldn't see and understand what I had done wrong because my karmic tendencies were so strong at the time. I asked to do a retreat and spent 2 weeks at Fugen Hermitage. During that retreat, I asked Avalokitesvara over and over again for help. I did a lot of meditation and spiritual reading and finally broke through and understood what I had done wrong. And this is a saying we have used here. I don't know if it's a common one. I needed to be hit over the head with a 2x4 to see what I needed to see. When I returned to the Abbey, she somehow knew that I understood, and I knew that she knew, and she treated me as such. Now, the question came up yesterday about what are karmic tendencies, and I was trying to think how to describe this. When we see the world through the lens of our karma, which obstructs our view of how things really are, we might react way out of proportion to what is said or done. And I thought of an example from my own training, which was we were doing a ceremony one day in our Buddha hall, and I never spread my mat because it hurt my back to do so when we spread our mat to do our full bows. So I didn't spread my mat, and the monk standing next to me offered to spread my mat for me. Well, I thought this monk was always judging me, and I thought he was judging me because I should have spread my mat myself. So I got real angry at him, and I said, I'll spread it myself, which I did. I spent the whole day angry at this monk for judging me. And at the end of the day, he called me into his office and he said, what did you think I was doing when I offered to spread your mat for you? And I said, well, you were judging me, you know. And he said, no, I was just trying to help. So I think that's a very good example of how we can react to something that's totally innocent and even kind with something that's come from the past. Someone may remind us of our mother or our father or some event in our past, and we react from that. The more we can sit still in the midst of what is arising, even if we can't see around our karma, the better able we are to see things clearly and act in a reasonable way and not keep creating the same karma over and over again. Life gives us these opportunities to see and let go of the self, to see how our karmic tendencies affect our response to other beings and to the world. I still have that karmic tendency that led to my mistake. However, it is much weaker, and I know that I can choose to respond in a better way. Great compassion is leading us home, and great compassion is not always gentle. I'd like to read you something from Living by Vow by Shohaku Okamura, in which he talks about Avalokitesvara. And he's giving a talk, and he says, today you have come to the Zen Center to sit and to listen to my talk. It is not necessarily fun, but you're here. You could have gone anywhere. This is a beautiful morning and you could be having fun, but you decided to come here and sit in this posture. It's not necessarily a comfortable posture, and my talk is not necessarily interesting, but you made a decision to come here. What made you decide to come to the Zen Center and sit Zazen? Avalokitesvara. This is the power that keeps us practicing and tells us to awaken. Avalokitesvara is a power not just inside us, but all around us, which leads us to awaken to the impermanence and egolessness that is the reality of our lives. New leaves are coming out on the trees. They show us that time passes and everything changes. Now winter to spring, and soon spring to summer. Life always changes, is always new and always fresh. We see everything around us change, and yet we believe that we do not. We believe that I am. I am the same person I was 40 years ago, 20 years ago, or yesterday. I will be the same person tomorrow. But the reality is that we are always changing. Our bodies and minds constantly change. So in the spring the leaves appear and birds sing to tell us, awake, awake to this reality. Everything is moving and changing. Everything is ever fresh each moment. This is Avalokitesvara helping us to see things clearly as they are. Everyone we encounter is Avalokitesvara. Our parents who took care of us, our friends, our competitors, or even enemies can be Avalokitesvara. They are here to show us the reality of life. We should be thankful. We should appreciate ourselves, all people we encounter, and all things in the universe. All of this is Avalokitesvara telling us to wake up and not be caught in egocentric delusion, encouraging us to become free from illusion and to see our life force straight on. This is Avalokitesvara. Reverend Master Jiyu talks a bit about the way we are helped by Avalokitesvara in a different way. She calls what helps us the trickle of the great ocean. I had a lot of doubts in my early days, especially about myself, But when I made a mistake, knowingly acting contrary to my Buddha nature, which I sometimes did in my early days, in a way it actually strengthened my faith by showing me that I did have faith, that I did care. In his chapter of the Shobogenzo, the great ocean of meditation, Dogen is talking about the catalyst for realization, and Reverend Master Jiyu says, here he is referring to the various things that cause us to reach this state, the catalyst for realization, so to speak. If I were asked to say what was the one thing that caused more people to come to realization than any other, I would say it was the teaching of perceptual truth. We hear of all the koans and how stones hit bamboo, how somebody stubbed his toe, etc., etc. You hear all of this, but what was it that set the thing going in the first place, so that suddenly something could act as a catalyst? There is a verse in the Shushogi which says, whenever these precepts are truly accepted, Buddhahood is reached. From these precepts come forth such a wind and fire that all are driven into enlightenment. That verse was the catalyst that projected me into the third Kensho. But what would have happened if I had not been studying the 10 precepts themselves in detail prior to that? The verse could not have been a catalyst. It would have had no meaning. What caused me to take up this detailed studying of the precepts at that point in my life? The fact that I was up to certain things, that something in me kept saying, you shouldn't do that. What was it in me that kept saying, you shouldn't do that, other than a trickle of the great ocean of meditation? Buddha begets Buddha in more ways than one. The catalyst is only a catalyst. It's a stone hitting a bamboo or a toe that gets stubbed, and this suddenly sort of jolts something off the shelf, or lines up a bunch of poles in one line, or whatever way you like to look at it. But it is that tiny little voice, that tiny little drop of the great ocean samadhi, which gets the thing going. Through all the many twists and turns that enlightenment uses to find itself within our lives, these are, each and every one, its trickles. You know how on a muddy road out there you sometimes see a tiny little trickle of water coming down, and just that tiny little spot is not dust or mud, and everything around it seems to dry up quickly, but yet that little trickle of water somehow still keeps running. That's how this is. Because we are honestly trying to train, a little trickle from the great ocean of meditation runs throughout one's life. By looking at it from the back end, as it were, after realization has taken place, you can see where the trickle has been. Anytime there is a trickle, and you see the possibility of going deeper in your training, of taking meditation and the precepts more fully into yourselves, go with it. Because this is what eventually creates a situation in which all conditions are ripe for a catalyst to do its work. It is going with the trickle that makes this happen. Do not go around looking for more and more better catalysts. Any catalyst will do when all conditions are ripe. The great ocean of meditation is the essence from which they, the Buddhas and ancestors, and we come and go. It is the energy of which we are composed. Appearance and disappearance, arising and vanishing, are but dreams. They are but phenomena in time, as we think of it. They are nothing more than that. The real essence has no time. The great ocean just is, which is why it is in a state of meditation, and why it does not get upset by all our twists and turns and twiddles, and why it cannot be bound by the sorts of moral codes that we put upon ourselves. We cannot conceive of a moral code so high that it can encompass the entire universe, and yet tolerate the twists and turns of each and every one of us. But that is just what the essence of the precepts, which is the essence of the great ocean of meditation, is. It's nice to think that the great ocean is trying to find its way into our lives, and it's not just us trying to find our way into the great ocean. So what can the pandemic and all the suffering associated with it teach us? We can perhaps see impermanence and uncertainty more clearly now. Feeling the grief and fear of those suffering can open our compassionate hearts and help us to see our interconnectedness with all beings. If Reverend Master Jiyu would sense that one of the monks was being complacent, she would pull the rug out from under them. Things were always changing at the Abbey, so we wouldn't get stuck. I think that one time when I was away for a weekend, both my work and my room had changed when I got back. You just never knew what would happen. Now the world has changed. Can we let that teach us? Can we stay still in the midst of suffering and not turn away? Through meditation, by listening, we can see what is good to do. And I found a nice little story in, what's this magazine called? Lion's Roar, by someone. What Buddhist teaching or practice is helping you the most in this crisis? And this is what Stacy Bolter says. When my Buddhist community learned of my layoff, they showered me with support. Because of them, I'm in a much better position now than I was before. I'm truly grateful for my Sangha. What frustrates me is the fact that so many people around the world are in the same position, but not all have support systems like I do. The teaching of interconnectedness is something that has helped me cope with this. Although I cannot help all those people directly, when I sit or chant or simply go about my day, I can offer my sense of peace to those people. I can offer them my resolve. Just as my suffering is their suffering, my peace and resolve can also be theirs. We need to find deep acceptance of life as it is, of each situation we find ourselves in, of ourselves, of others. Calling on Kuan-Yin can help us. How can she hear our cries if we don't ask for help? Now, I sent all of you the Kuan-Yin scripture that Reverend Master Koten wrote, and I'd like to read it now and perhaps make some comments on it. Why is great compassion so important to training that it is called the very offspring and heir of the Buddha? Just listen. Great compassion responds to all beings and situations without exception. It produces and comes forth from deep commitment to training ourselves. It is essential to understanding and practicing the teaching of all the Buddhas. When people hear about great compassion, look for its manifestations in their lives and cherish it within their own hearts, then everything is transformed. If events should overwhelm you, pushing you towards suffering and pain, bring to mind practice and realize great compassion, and that situation will be transformed and you will be able to be still no matter what happens. And I mentioned this earlier, that when I call on Kuan-Yin for help, sometimes it was just a slight shift in the way I saw things that made it possible to sit still within what was going on. If you are drifting without purpose and life seems about to drown you, remember, think on, bring to mind and call upon great compassion, and you will see compassion in the situation and be able to stay afloat. If circumstances cast you down and there seems no way to get up, bring to mind, remember, and practice great compassion, and you will be lifted up. If you fall and hurt yourself on the rocks of life, remember again great compassion and let go of the hurt and continue on. So this is where it's very important to see that perhaps the hurt is just an overreaction or a reaction to what someone says or does, and that you can just allow yourself to feel that hurt and then allow it to go. If surrounded by threatening events and people who wish you harm, call upon, bring to mind, and practice great compassion, and the minds of those people will change for the better. If you offer great compassion to people who might be wanting to cause you harm, if you offer them merit, you may see a change. When you are persecuted by events and there is no way out, think on, remember the great power of compassion, and a way through will appear. If tied up and chained down by events, frustrated, unable to escape, bear in mind and remember compassion, and it will free you. When others spread poison about you or try to manipulate you, call upon, practice, and rely on great compassion, and they will be unable to do you any real harm. When you sit still, no matter what is going on around you, there is that within yourself that cannot be harmed. If evil should come, terrifying you, rely on the strength of great compassion, and it will be unable to have any power over you. And that's the same thing. When anger or desire threaten to overwhelm you, remember, hold fast to, and take refuge in compassion, and you will be able to be still in the midst of it. Once you see that anger and desire, when acted upon, create great harm, you will want to change. But maybe it's, the anger comes up, the desire comes up, and you want to go with it. So call on Kanzeon, call on great compassion to help you to sit still. When you cannot see what is good to do because of overwhelming distractions, think on, remember, and take refuge in great compassion, and the sky will clear. If struck by unfairness and disaster or pain you cannot bear, remember to take refuge in and practice compassion, and you will be able to go on. It sometimes feels like we cannot bear something, but in actual fact we can. The power of great compassion is miraculous, can be applied in all situations, in all worlds, everywhere. There is no place where it cannot manifest itself. Hellish, bestial, evil, pain. In all circumstances and mental states, compassion can be applied. To view things in this way and take refuge in compassion is not delusion or wishful thinking, but seeing things as they really are, in truth, free from confusion, full of love for all beings. Great compassion must always be remembered, prayed to, thought upon throughout our entire lives. She is pure light, wisdom dispelling all darkness, overcoming all obstacles. When the entire universe is shaking, she sits still and pours out great compassion on the entire world, putting out the fires. And this is a time of great difficulty in the world, and our stillness in our meditation is of great help. When the news of the world grieves and oppresses us, think on the power of great compassion, and remember that nothing can resist the power of compassion. When we listen for the call of great compassion in our lives, we will hear the exquisite, powerful, and incomparable voice of kindness and clarity and stillness above all the clamor and din of the world. Because of all of this, we should have faith in and remember great compassion, a true holy refuge in all grief, trouble, and disaster, even in the face of death and destruction. Great compassion can never be exhausted, is full of merits and virtues. Because of this, she must forever be adored. They who hear this teaching about great compassion and remember to practice it, and I wrote this, I've underlined this, will receive an estimable merit, because here the power of great compassion is described and explained. The life of compassion, endowed with all miraculous powers, appears everywhere. The power of this teaching on great compassion causes those who truly listen to and practice it to want to go all the way on this incomparable path to the unborn. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.